Hi guys, it's Dema Designs, and in this video we will build a custom multi-select component with AlpineJs and Tailwind-cSS. Let me give you first a small preview. So this is the component, and it has an input field which we can use to filter elements. Let's say we want to search for yellow, and we want to select it, so we click on it, and it will be removed from this list, and it will be shown up as a tag element next to the input field. So let's select another one. Let's say we want green. So it got removed also and added to this list here as a tag element. So you can also use your keyboard to navigate and to select elements. So we hit enter. You can remove elements when you click on a tag element, or simply hitting the backspace button or the delete button on a tag element whenever it is focused. And yeah, that's basically it. Another thing is we have an adjustable size for this dropdown here. So right now it is set to 6, so it will show up 6 elements, and the other ones will be overflown, like this last one here. And we have also an adjustable size for the characters, which will be shown on the tag element or on the item itself. Another thing which it does support is, let me show you what I mean. It can allow duplicates. So this is an extension I installed in Chrome. It's AlpineJS DevTools, and you can have a look for a component here and so on, and mutate your state and so on. So we have allow duplicates. Let's set that to true. Now, whenever we select an item, it won't be removed here, since we can select as many as we want from the same element. Yeah, that's basically it. And I'd say let's get started. So here we go. I've opened up VS Code, and we have 2 folders here. One is called final, the other one is starter, and we will go with starter here. And if you'd like to code along, you should use that. You will find the link in the description to GitHub, and there will be the code available for you. There will be starter as and the final also. And yeah, let's see what we have here. So as you can see, I've added some comments here, so you have a good overview. And we will start with dependencies. And as you can see, we have 2 script tags here. One is for AlpineJS, and the other one is for TailwindCSS. And you can simply find them on their website. So you visit AlpineJS, you go to installation, and here you have this script tag which I copied. And TailwindCSS, we have this placeCDN, which is for development only. So I've copied that and put that here as well. And you should, for production, you shouldn't use that. Yes, like they say. Let's see. So let's say I will explain the HTML markup first, so that you have a small overview. So this is our starter, and this is our final. So we go to our starter file. I've opened them up with VS Code Live Server. So whenever we hit save, let's change something, it will be updated, and that is why. So what do we have here? So we have this whole thing. This is our component. So we have a container which wraps everything, and this is it. This is our div, where it says start component, and inside this we should have 2 main things. So this is the first one, and this is the other one, the drop-down list here below. And in this first one we have a dummy tag. We should have an input field and this icon here. And as you can see, they are here. So we have this list, this unordered list. Inside this unordered list we have this li tag. We have this input field here, and we have this icon, this SVG here. So, and down below we have this drop-down list, and inside this drop-down list here, which is this, we have this dummy value here, this item element, and we have this element here, which is which will show an empty text whenever there are no items available. So that's basically the structure. This is all static and CSS only. And I'd say let's get started with AlpineJS. So first, in AlpineJS, everything starts with xData, which is an HTML attribute which you put on your root element. So this is our root element, and you would simply say, hey, xData is equal to an object, and this object will hold all your data, and this data will be available in your markup. So let's say, for example, we have expanded and we set that to false, and we want to show this drop-down list here only whenever this value here is true. And AlpineJS uses directives like the xData itself. It's called the directive. As you can see here, we have directives, and there are a lot of directives, and we will use a lot of them in our example here. So there is one which is called xShow, and we will put that on our unordered list here, which is this. And we say, hey, this should only be visible whenever expanded is true. So you can simply put an expression here inside this quotes, and since this is an expression on its own, we put expanded here, and now it should be only visible whenever this is true. So I hit save, and as you can see, it's hidden now, and whenever we change that to true, it should be visible. So let's show you. So now it is visible. Yeah, that's basically it. And I'd say let's revert everything first so that we can start clean. Yeah. So like I've mentioned, we start on our root element, and we put our xData attribute here, and we pass an object here. But since we will have many methods and a lot of properties, I'd like to create a function for that and put that here down below in our script tag and call it here. And this function will return this object, so it would be the same. So let's create this function here down below in our script tag. So we have a function called Multiselect, and this will have a param, which we will call config here. So this is the object we pass in here, and we want to return an object here. So this is the same as putting this object directly at xData instead of calling this function here. So inside this, we will have some properties, and let's start with our first property, which we will call items. And items will be an array which hold all our items here, like this one here, dummy value. And we want to put that to config.items or an empty array. We will have another array which we will call all items, and this will be a copy of the items array, since we want to filter our elements and we want to change the value of items. We simply create a copy so that we have this for later, and you will see what I mean later. So we set that by default to null. We will have selected items, which will be null by default first. We will have a property called search, and this will be bound to our input later so that we can track our value here. So whatever is typed in here will be tracked by this value. You will see what I mean later. We will have a search placeholder. The search placeholder will be the placeholder for our input field, which is type here right now. Or you can say config.placeholder, search placeholder, or type here, and so on. So this is our initial state. So if you'd like to put your placeholder here, you simply would say, hey, search placeholder should be whatever, and this will be mapped here. So let's move on. we will have property which is called expanded, and this is the same I showed to you. So we will use that to show our height, our drop-down list, and this will be false by default. We will have let's see, an empty text, which will be this here. No items found. Empty text will be, let's say, config.empty text, or what do we have? No items found by default. We will have another property which we call allow duplicates. Duplicates is false initially, or let's say config dot allow duplicates or false. Then we will have size. Size will define how many items will show up, and the other ones will be overflown, like I showed you in the preview. So this will be also config.size, or by default, let's say 6. We will have item height, which defines the height of this element here, the item element, and this is 40 by default. So let me show you. Yeah, it's 40, as you can see. So we set that to 40, or we say config.itemHeight if you'd like to define it on yourself. So config.itemHeight or 40, and we will have two properties. One is called maxItemChars, which will be config.maxItemChars, or we say, let's say 25, and let's say 50, and we will have maxTextChars, which will be config.maxTextChars, or let's say 25 here, and these two properties will be used to define how many characters will be shown on the item. So this is for maxItemChars, and we have 50 here, and it will append these dots here, and maxTextChars will be this here. So the same 25 characters and these dots here. Yeah. So we will have also a property which is called activeIndex, which is -1 by default, and we will use that to navigate with our arrows, so that we have this functionality here. Yeah. So these are properties. These are the properties we need. And next thing is let's put some dummy data here inside our config object, which is this here, and let me copy that from here. So this is our object. It's quite the same. We have this multiselect function which holds this config here, and let's copy this items array here. So let's just delete this, add this items array here. We hit save. Nothing changes since we don't use them. We have simply defined them here, but we don't use them right now. So in AlpineJS, you have another directive which is called xinit. So this one here. And this allows you, like it says here, to hook into the initialization phase of any element. And yeah, this will be run directly after initialization. So we will use that as well. So let's create a function for that first. So we put that inside our object here. Since we want to use that in our markup, everything has to be inside this object. So our function will be called on init. This will be a function without any params, and in this function we want to create the copy of the items array. So we want to say, hey, this, so everything is accessible via this here. So whenever you want to access one of these properties, you have to say this. So we say this dot all items, should be a copy of, so we use destructuring here since we want to create a copy of our array. Say this dot all items equals to this dot, oh, sorry, this dot items, or yeah, it should be it. So now we have our all items copy, and let's see. Next is we want to say, hey, selected items. Okay, maybe you will have some default selected elements, and as you can see, we are working here with label and value properties, and there will be another value which will be called selected. So let's say we have this here selected by default, so we set selected to true, and we want to assign them here as well on init. So we say this dot selected items will be, we map over this dot all items, we filter them, sorry, we say item, and we want to have only these items that have a property called selected, which is set to true. So this will return all items that have this property set to true. So I have this, and in order to use that function, as I've mentioned, we should use this xinit directive, which we also put on our root element. So we say xinit, and on init we want to call our onInit function. So you can put your braces here or simply omit them, but I put them here. And as you can see here, let's open our DevTools. We have this here also, and there's all our property. There are all our properties here which we defined. So I keep that open so we can test this as we go stuff here out. So next is, let's see, we want to first, let's say we want to hide our list and show it only whenever expanded is set to true, like I've showed you before. So in order to do that, we can simply say, hey, we want to show this, let's set that to false initially. Where is it? Okay, it's already set to false, and we say, let me see, let's hide it first. So this is it, and we say, we've used xshow, but I will use xif here. So because xshow will only say, let me show you, expanded. So expanded is false by default. So here expanded is false, and whenever this is true, this will be shown. This will simply say display.none, so this will put the CSS property on it, but it will be rendered here. But since we don't need this to show up or render, we can use xif, so this will only be rendered whenever whenever expanded is true. But you can't use any directive on each element. So for example, xif must be used on a template tag. So you have to wrap everything in a template and say xif expanded. So we put our list inside our template tags, we hit save, and now it's gone, as you can see. And whenever we set that to true, it should be there as well. Okay, so that is it. So remember, you have to use template tags for xif, for example, and there are some other directives where you have to use a template like x4, for example, which you will see later on. So we want to show this drop-down list whenever we click on our input. So this is our input. Let's say, so another directive is called xon, and you can say x on, colon click. So whatever DOM event you want. So we want click here, and we want to set expanded to true. So you put your expression here, your function here, and this will be run whenever you click on it. So we set that to true on click. So let's test that. I saved, and as you can see, it got opened now. So you can omit x on and put simply add symbol here, and remove the colon as well, and this will do the same. So this works. It's quite the same. And we also want to open this drop down here when we focus in. So we do the same here, expand it to true. We want to do that whenever we type something in. So it could be closed. Sorry, it could be closed as well by default, and I will show you why later on. So we will close it whenever we hit escape, and when it is closed then and you start typing, it should open up. So because of that, we have add input 2. We will have add key up dot arrow dash down, where we set expanded to true, expanded to true. So as you can see, we have this dot notation here. So we say add key up dot arrow dash down, and we have I copied that line. We have arrow up as well, and we will use these two here to navigate here as well. So this here to navigate our keyboard, and we will implement this functionality later on too, and append our functions here. So this is opening, and we will open this up whenever we click on this element as well. So let me reload, and right now it doesn't open up. So we have to look for our icon, and this is it. And we say, hey, whenever let me copy this line here. Whenever we click on this, we want to set expanded to true as well. So there we go. So this was the handling for opening the dropdown list. Now let's add some handlers for closing the list. And for that, we will first add the event, add key up dot escape, where we will say, let's say we want to call a method, which we will call reset, and let's create this method. This method will say for now this dot expanded is equal to false, and this should work whenever we hit escape. Nice. And we want also to we also want to close this up whenever we lose focus from this whole element. So from our root component, root element. So let's add a focus out handler on this. So we say add focus out, and we want to call handle blur method, and this method will be created here. So let's say handle blur, and this you will always have access to the event, so you don't have to pass that here. It will be available initially, so you can simply check, hey, or let's say this dot expanded to false first to show you what I mean. So whenever we click outside, so whenever this loses focus, it will close up the dropdown list, but this will also be closed whenever we hit related elements. So this is a related element, so this got closed, and this should not happen. And for that, we should add a check, and our check should look like that. So if this dot dollar element, so this dot dollar element is our component, our DOM component. So whether this contains e.related target. We don't want to do anything. So if this is not related, if this is related, we want to see. Yeah, nice. If this is related, we don't want to close it up. So this means that the related target, in this case this child here, triggered the focus out, and in that case we don't want to close this list. So we return. So next thing is let's render our elements since we have our data here. So we have our item elements. Let's render them here, and for that we will use another directive which is called x4, this one here, and this will loop or iterate through our elements, our items array, and you can simply do whatever you want with for each iteration. So let me show you what I mean. We want to render them here, so let's look for dummy value. There's our dummy value. This is our list. And x4 is another directive which you have to use on a template tag. So let's say template, and on this template we say x4, and there we put in our items. So we say x4 item in items, and let's cut this out and put this here, since we want to render our li elements. Let me hit save, and now there should be a lot of dummy values, since it iterates through each element and renders this tag here for each of them. So, but we don't want to render these. We want to render the item text. So this is our label which we want to render. So we have to say item.label, and let's remove dummy value first. And you can't put item.value inside this here. You have to use another AlpineJS directive for that, which is called x-text. So this will simply put everything inside between your tags as HTML. So you could also put HTML here, and it will be inserted. So we say item.label, and here, as you can see, we are accessing item because we are in the iteration right now of each item itself, and we have access to it. So we say item.label should be the text which goes between these tags. So let's hit save and let's open it, and as you can see, now we have all our elements here. So next thing is we don't want to show our empty text here, and we only want to show that if we don't have any items. But let's first create the filtering for that. So right now it doesn't do anything, and for that we will use another directive which is called xModel, and xModel will simply bind a value. So our value will be search to our input field. Let's say here x-model search. So whenever the value changes, search will track that, and so AlpineJS will track that and change our search value so that it holds our input value. Okay. So sorry. And based on this value, we want to filter our elements, and because of that, we have created. Did we create it? No. Because of that, we want to create another property which we will call filtered items, so that we filter only the items that match our input here. So we say down below here, we say since this is a property, a computed property, we say, hey, git filtered items, and this will simply return the data we already have, which is all items. And this is because this is why we have created all items, a copy of items, because we want to change that. And whenever the input got cleared, we simply want to reset our all items array to our items. So we keep that as is. So we want to return here everything. So all items, we filter all items. We have this item, and we want to return each item, which includes not the item itself, because this is an object. We want to say item.label, because we are filtering the labels. Item.label includes, let's say, to lowercase, if this includes the value of this dot search dot to lowercase. Yeah, that's basically it. And now it says all items is not defined, because we have to use this dot all items. And now our all items, our filtered items array should be mutated whenever we type something in. So right now we have 7 items, let's say blue, and as you can see, now we have blue only. And since we have filtered items now, we can use this as a property, and we want to use that to render our elements. So we don't want to render all items, we only want to render our filtered items. So here's where we did that. And let's say we want to render filtered item and filtered items, and we have to change that here as well. And now it should work. So let's say yellow, and there we go. Now you have filtered, and you have reset it. Yeah, that's it. So filtering works. Next is we want to hide our empty message here, which is down below. We want to show that only if we don't have any items. So if we don't have any filtered items. So we simply say, hey, we want to render this only. So we create since we want to use xif, we create a template here as well, where we say xif we don't have filtered items dot length. So if filtered items dot length is 0, it should be false. So this should work now. So let's see, and it's gone. Let's type something weird, and as you can see, it didn't find any elements, so it got rendered here. Yeah, nice, this works. So next up, we want to get rid of this dummy tag here, and we want to render only what we've selected. So we have a property which is called selected items, and selected items is null by default, but it will be changed on init, and it will look inside the all items array and check if there is one which have a selected property which is set to true. So let's see, where is it? So there's our dummy tag, and we only want to render text we have selected here. So as you know, we have to use our template tag for the x4 directive, and we want to render here our selected item and selected items, and we want to put this li element between these template tags. And right now we have we have one selected element. Because of that, it is still there. So let's remove that first. So it should be gone. Yeah. And we don't want to have this text here. So let's get rid of that. And we want to use x text here as well. And we want to say text should be what is inside our label. So selected item.label, and there we go. Let's try that out. Let's say we want to select yellow initially, and we add this property here, select it true, and there we go, selected. Yeah, nice, this works. So as you can see, this is still here and shouldn't be available unless allow duplicates is set to true, but we will handle that later on. Right now, let's add a handler for clicking on item, so adding it. Let's first get rid of this here. And let's see. So we want to add an element whenever we click on it. So we should check our elements. They are here. So we add a click handler here, where we say, hey, whenever you receive a click, we want to call a method, which we will call handle item click. Okay, and we want to pass the filtered item here. So since we have access here, we can use it as a param as well. So let's create this method here. So right now, handle item click, let me copy that. And let's create that down to handle blur. And we have this item here. And we simply want to push that to our selected items array. So we say this dot selected items dot push item. So that should be it. Let's see. So whenever we click on an item, it will be added here as a tag element. Nice, this works. Let me reload. And yeah, since we want to handle allow duplicates, we will add another thing, and another thing is a watcher. So AlpineJS provides some magics. It's called magics. That's nice. So we can watch properties, and we can do some magic whenever the property watches. So we want to watch. Let me show you how it works. So we want to watch our select items array, and we want to add our watcher on init. So let's add it here down below the all items. So we say this dot watch, and we want to watch selected items, and you can add a callback here, and you have access to the new value and to the old value. Pass this function, and we want to check if we have already so we want to remove our elements whenever they got selected, unless allow duplicates is set to true, but we will handle allow duplicates later. So let's say so this dot all items should be equal this dot items. So this dot all items may be filtered, so we use this dot items, and we want to filter out each element. So let's say we have item itself, index, and all items, and we want to return never mind, we want to check first so we filter our all items array and check if the item already is included in our all items array, and if that is true, we don't want to put that inside our all items. So we only want to return these elements that are not already inside our selected items array. So we say new value dot every, and we have access to the new value, and where we can say new value dot value is not equal item dot value. So let me explain to you what happens here. So what basically happens here is, so we have our new value. Let me change that first. Let's call it new values and old values. And this is our selected items array after the mutation. And we simply loop over our original items array, and we filter out all elements that are not inside this new values array. So we say, hey, look inside our new values array and check every value which is not equal to item.value. So we strip out every element that is not inside the new values array. Yeah, I'll try to explain that later on a bit better, but for now I think that's okay. So let's save that, and this should work now. So let's see what we've did here. Okay, we don't have any items, so I've did something wrong here. Let me see. Yeah, the problem here is we are not returning anything because of these braces. You would say, hey, return this, or you can omit this and omit the braces, curly braces here, and this should work now. So move this as well. It's a reload, and now we have our elements. So whenever we click on one of these items, it should be removed, and yeah, this works, as you can see. Nice. So let's reload, and next is we want to remove elements whenever we click on these tags here. So whenever we click on a tag, it should remove the element and re-add it here to this list. This should work automatically since we are filtering. We have filtered items here, and we have this watcher here. So whenever we click on this, we want to remove it, and this is a tag element, and let's have a look. So there are these tags, and we simply say add click. We want to remove this element, and for that we will create a function which will be called remove element by index, and we want to pass this index here, and in order to use this index we have to expand our x4 here and add this index here. So this is an array function where you have access to the element itself, to the index, and to the array itself if you'd like to. So we've added index here. We are passing the index of the tag element to this function, and yeah, this will be called whenever we click on it. So let's create this function. Down below there's this function, and we have this index here, and we say this function, we say this dot selected items dot filter item and index. Oh no, let's use slides here. Slides is better. So we want to use slice here, and we want to splice. Sorry, we want to splice out the element by the index. So we say this dot selected items dot splice, and we start at the index we passed in, and we want to remove one element. So this should work now. Let's try that. Remove green, remove magenta, and yellow, and they got re-added here since we have this watcher here, and this works well. Nice. So let's see. Next up, we want to add the functionality of removing whenever we focus an element and whenever we hit the delete key on it. So let's see. So in order to make them focusable, we have to add a tab index to them. So let's do that first. Let's say here tab index equals to 0. Now we can focus them. Yeah, and whenever we hit the delete or the backspace button here key, we should remove them as well. So we say add key up dot delete. We simply call this function again. Let me copy this and add backspace. We want to do that as well. So let's try that. Hit delete. I hit backspace, and yeah, this works. Nice. So let's now work on the functionality for navigating with the keyboard, and for that we have added these two events here, event handlers, and we want to put another method here, and you can simply change them here by separate them with a colon, and we will call a method which will be called select brief item and select next item, and this will be select next item, and here we will call select brief item. And let's define these methods down below. So we've added this method here, and we want to first check if we have any items. So if we don't have any filtered items, we don't want to do anything here. So we say return if you don't have any filtered items. So in this case, we don't want to do anything. And else we want to say, hey, this dot active index plus plus. So now let's see this active index. Now I had the down key. Let's reload. Let's check that. Active index -1. What did we do here? Let's see. Active index. Okay, this works. Nice. So whenever we reach the bottom, so 0, array starts at 0, as you may know, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And whenever we reach this here and hit the down button, we want to reset the active index to 0 again. So for that, we add an additional check where we say, hey, whenever this dot filtered items dot length is the -1, since we started at 0, is equal to this dot active index. We want to say we want to return and say this dot active index is equal to 0. So whenever we reach the bottom, we should start at the top again. So let's test that. AlpineJS active index is -1. Hit. So right now we are here. We hit again, and now we should jump back to 0. Nice, this works. So we want to highlight the element which is active, which we define by the active index. So we will use another directive here, which is called xbind, and we will add a class to it conditionally whenever we have an expression which is true, and our expression will be checking the current index of the filtered item against the active index number. So we add it here, so that we have access to the index itself, and we say we want to add a class whenever the index is equal to the active index, and the class is called bg-ember200. And let's get rid of this, and this should work as well. So this is the same as saying this. Okay, so let me double check that first. You can say explain.placeholder. Okay, this is a shorthand syntax, yes. So this should work too. So this is our final. Let's make sure we are on our starter, and let's hit the down arrow, and this works well. Nice. So we also have the select pref item method, and let's work on that as well. Where is it? So here we go, and there we should also have some checks. So first is the same check we have here. So let's copy that. If we don't have any elements, we don't want to do anything. And another check is similar to this check here. So whenever we hit the up key, we want to subtract one from active index. So we say this.active index minus minus, but we don't want to do that. Or let's say we want to check where we at. So let's say we are, let me reload first. Let's say we are here, and we hit the up key. So we are at -1, and we should check if we are at -1 or at 0, because when that is true, we want to set that to the length -1. So we say if this.active index is equal to 0, or this.active index equal to -1. We want to set this.active index to this.builder.items.length -1. So this should work. Let's see. I hit up key, up key, up key, up key, up key, up key. Okay, it is it's one too much. Let's see. Yeah, it's because we forgot to add the return here, because it did this as well. So now this should work. I hit up, 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 and down, 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 up, up. Okay, nice, works. Cool. So next up, let's see what we do next. We added this active class, and now we want to add the element whenever it is highlighted, and we hit the enter key. And for that we as you can see, we are right now on the input element, so we should put that on our input, and our input is here, and we say add key up dot enter, and we will create the method for that, which we will call add active item. And yes, we will I will create it. Let's see. Let's add it here, add active item, and we say active item is the item which we can get from our all items array by our active index. So let's first check if we have one. So if this dot filtered items at this dot active index is not there, so we want to return, and if not, we want to add that to our select items array. So this dot select items dot push, say this dot filtered items at this dot active index, and that should be it. So let's see if this works. So let's hit the enter key on one of the elements, so on yellow. So it got re-added, and as you can see, gray is now highlighted since the active index didn't change after the selection. And this causes problems because let's say we want to look for blue, and when I hit the arrow keys now, down or up, it won't highlight the correct one because we have to handle this. So for that we will add another watcher. So right here, let's put it on top. So this dot watch, and we want to watch filtered items since it changes whenever we select something or deselect something. And here we also have new values and the old values, and we add this callback here, and we simply want to check, or we want to reset the active index whenever the filtered items array changes, like I've mentioned. So we first want to check if length changed. So whenever the length changes, we want to say this dot active index is equal to -1. So this should reset it. Let's test it. So let's select yellow, and it changed. So filtered items changed, and now we should be at -1 again. So when I hit bottom arrow key, down arrow key, it should work as well. And yeah, looks good, nice. So next up, let's add the functionality to allow duplicates, and this is quite simple since we already have this watcher here, the selected items watcher, because this handles the removing the already selected elements from the dropdown list and prevents duplicates. So we only have to say, hey, if this dot allow duplicates set to true, we don't want to cut anything out. So now whenever we set duplicates to true, let's do that here, it shouldn't remove any elements from our dropdown list, and this works as expected. Nice. So let's reload this. Now imagine you have many items. So right now we have only 7, but imagine you have 50 items and you don't want them to show up all at once. For that case, we will have a style object which we will put on this, and we will use our size and item height properties here we defined and calculate pixels. So we add another computed value here, which we will call list box style, and this will simply return an object with a property called max height, and this will be inside a template literal. So we say dollar this dot size times this dot item height, and we append pixel to that, and we want to put that style object. So we want to put it on, what is wrong here? I don't need that since this is object. We want to put that on our unordered list here, which holds all our items. And for that, we will again use our expand attribute. And as you might remember, we can omit this since we have this colon here. And we say colon style. And we want to pass in our object here, which got returned by this method. So let's see if that works. So this looks good. We have 6 elements here, and the last one is down below, so we have to scroll, and that is fine. So next up, we will create a handler that scrolls through our active element. So let me show you what I mean. So whenever we use our keyboard, it won't scroll to our active element, because right now it should be this and it didn't scroll. Let me create a method for that, which we will call scroll to active element, and this should have access to our list box, and for that we will use another AlpineJS directive, which is called xref, and we will put that on our unordered list here, say x.ref, and we will call this list box. Now we have a simple access to this list by calling this.refs.listbox. So this should be the list box. Since we want to access the children, we can say children here. And let me show you something. So let's log that first. Oh no, we can't log that because we are not calling it. I will show it to you later. So we have this children, and since we are using template tags here, so there's this template tag and this also, we want to slice them out. So we don't want to use these template tags. So because of that, we say we extract our children. So we say const available child elements, and we create a shallow copy by destructuring our children array, and we slice 2 from -1 from the beginning. So this should hold all our available elements, on only the li elements without the template tags. And now we want to say we want to say, hey, available elements at this.activeIndex. Scroll into view, and we want to pass an option of block.end. So this should scroll to our element which is active. So in order to use that, we will add another watcher. So let's put that down below here. We want to watch active index, and whenever, let me change that to a singular, and whenever this changes, we want to call this.scroll to active element. Okay, so let's test that. 1, 2, okay, end is not defined. Where is end? Okay, this should be in quotes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it scrolled. That's cool. So here it says cannot read properties of undefined, because let me see. This is because active index could be -1 and yeah, a number which is not available for our input array. So let's say we have -1 and it will look for this element and it won't find it. So we should add some checks here. So we can simply say, hey, if this.activeIndex, or let's say if new value, because this holds our active index, is equals -1, or if we don't have an item at a new value, or if the drop-down list is not opened, so not expanded, we want to return. So we want to do anything here. So let's test that again. Expanded is not defined, because we should use this.expanded, and now this should work as expected. Cannot read properties of undefined. This is because, let me see, when does this happen? Okay, at last element. Give me a second. Yeah, the problem here is that we are using x4 here, but in the final one I've added another template here with the xif directive, So this will only be rendered if we have any filtered items. So like this. Now it should work because now we have these two template tags which we slice out here. So now this should work without any errors, and this looks good. Nice. Okay, and whenever we select an element, we want to reset our input field and we want to reset our active index. So let's do that on our methods, which were called reset first. And yeah, we've added that here. I've added it here. So we simply say this.expanded false, and we set the active index to -1 again, and we clear our input field. And we want to do that also on our handle item click. So for that we say this.search is equal to an empty string, and we want to also focus our input element. So whenever we click here, we want to keep the focus on this element. So we need access to this element. So we have to again add a xref to our input element. There we go. Let's say x-ref is search input. Give it a save and jump back to our method. And we were here. Let's say this.refs.search input .focus. So this will keep our focus. Whenever we click, yeah, you see it's got focused again. And this looks good so far. Let's test that with our keyboard. Okay, and we have to handle that as well. We yeah, this should work now. Whenever we hit enter here, this should reset it too. So for that, okay, so it will not reset the active index since we have allowed duplicates set to true. So whenever we set that to false, this will be reset because filtered items array will be changed. So let me show you how this would be. So let's set that to false again, and let's select yellow. And as you can see, everything got reset since this filtered items array changed. So this works as expected, and this looks good. And now let's handle these long characters here. So let's use our properties here, which we've defined here. So max item chars and max text chars. And for that, we will create a method which we will call shortened label. And this will simply return our string, the string we pass to it, and create a substring of that. So let's say shortened label, and it needs a label and max chars property, and it will simply return the substring and append some dots to it. So let's add some additional checks here. So if there are no max chars or label length is smaller or equal to max chars, we want to return the label as is. Else we want to return template literal, and we say label.substring from start to max chars, and we want to append some dots. So that should be it. And let's use that where we have this and where we are rendering our text. So we are using xtext directive for that. So this is here. So let's say we want to use shortened label. Shortened label needs the label itself and the number, how many characters we want to show up. And for that we have max tag chars. And let's copy this and add that to our item as well. So here we go. And this is our label. Let's change it up here. And this should work now. Okay, max textures is not defined. I've misspelled that. So this is max textures and this is max item chars. So this should work now. So as you can see, we have created a substring here and for this too. Yeah, that's basically it. And let's see if we have some properties left here. Let's check that. So we have empty text and search placeholder left, and we simply bind them to our elements. So for the input field, we say colon placeholder, and we want to put our search placeholder here, and this should does the same. And what was it? We have our empty text. Yes, empty text should be rendered between these tags here with xtext, and we say empty text here, and now it should work as well. Let's see, let's change that. No items found. Okay, this looks good. So these properties got bound too, and yeah, that's basically it. Another small style thing I want to mention here is on the list box style, we can add two here since we have a border on our drop-down list. Yeah, and I think that's all I wanted to show. It looks good to me. So in the final version, so this one here, I've added a lot of comments. So whenever you want to check that, you should read the comments in order to understand what happens there. And yeah, I've omitted them here because it would take a bit too much time. And yeah, I will revise that and check if everything is right, and that's basically it.